and welcome to AEW Unrestricted, the official podcast of All Elite Wrestling. I am Aubrey Edwards, along with my best friend and fun behind-the-scenes employee, coworker person, Will Washington. How you doing, Will?
I'm doing great.
What is your official title? I don't know. I'm like, he just does
wrestling
creative things.
I know it's the official title is Wrestling Administrative Coordinator.
That's so like, what do you do?
I know that title changed like a million times. I remember it was we were like trying to come up with various things, and I remember it was just like creative coordinator initially, and then it was like, oh, you're also going to be doing this, and you're also going to be doing this, and then it was like, you know what, we're just going to leave it under like wrestling administration. I remember when that all came about that day.
I think it was one of those, like, I was at one point like special projects coordinator. I'm like, no, that sounds made up. Like, we can't do that. I'm about senior project manager. Like, we don't need to be different. Let's just do that. Anyway, if you're a newbie to this podcast, you may not know that we are sponsored by Upper Deck, this amazing trading card company. You can collect your favorite wrestlers in the 2024 Upper Deck AEW and start your trading card collection today. Unwrap autograph, memorabilia, premium tech inserts. Visit upperdeck.com to learn more. And we've actually got some new cards we're opening today.
Yeah.
I've got some cool ones from the new Black Diamond set, which are all premium cards that like feel very expensive.
Yes, they are thick.
Yuck, with 2 C's.
Yeah,
my favorite. I just pulled this like Diamond Might. It's like 3D. It's actually transparent. It's kind of hard to see on the video. But it's literally like Orange Cassidy punching somebody mid-punch.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's freaking cool. Yeah, I'm going to need to bring that to work and give it to him. He'll just go, thanks, and then not really care, but it'll make me feel good. I've got your boy. Ooh, Swerve Strickland. Look how shiny that guy is.
Well, speaking of Orange Cassidy, I've got Chuck Taylor.
Chuck Taylor. Oh, buddy.
Yeah, look at that.
Took him 5 years, but he finally said the S word on TV.
He did.
I've got Cope. I'm so happy he's been back on TV. Real excited. Oh, I also have this card from I think our guest for today. Who's our guest today, Will?
And we are joined by a man who we're all very familiar with, but I would like to introduce him as the 5th most powerful man in all of professional wrestling, and we'll get into that in a moment. He's also co-host of his own podcast. And also a dog dad.
Ooh.
Welcome, Rocky Romero.
Hello. It's nice to be here again. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Fun story. We were going to have you on the podcast a couple months ago and then got a fun text that said, "Hi, I'm stuck in immigration," which is probably the most Rocky Romero text I could have gotten. Because it was like, I don't know where this guy is half the time. He has to work for like 3 different companies. So speaking of being the 5th most powerful man in wrestling, go ahead, Will.
I was going to say, I'm really proud of you, though, because as much as you are constantly on the go, working for multiple different companies, I had a phone call with you the other day, and you were actually sleeping. You were catching up on sleep. I'm so proud of you. You finally got some sleep.
Thank you. It's been 3 years since I've slept, and I finally got some sleep. I was stuck in immigration for 3 years, so you know. But no,
that guy on TV, he's just been in a Rocky mask.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's great to see you both and to be here once again on the pod.
Well, let's talk about that 5th most powerful man in wrestling, which I know, like, we all throw that at you, and I always watch your look go, guys, but but it's true. I mean, let's get the list. All of the job titles you currently hold in professional wrestling.
Oh man, you're gonna really call me out, Will.
Yeah.
I hold a VP position for New Japan of America and a VP position for AEW, and then I help with the whole world of this wrestling cartel that we've kind of created between CMLL and AEW and New Japan and Rev Pro and in the UK and a host of other people that kind of are a part of this group that we kind of put together in the last couple of years.
Rocky's job title is glue of the professional wrestling industry. That's what I've learned. Right. It's just like Rocky probably knows somebody. He's just going to send a text and then magic happens.
Right. That's a much better way to put it than fifth most powerful man. That's way too much stress. That's way
Right.
too much stress.
The
Yeah.
glue of professional
Thanks
wrestling.
to Brian Danielson for that, I think. So
Yes.
That's right. That was his fault.
totally his fault.
But it's great. It's. I mean, it is true that as Aubrey just put it, you are connected in so many different facets of professional wrestling that literally it's there's so many times where we want to get something going, and it's literally like, bet you Rocky can make that call, and you'll make the phone call and make it happen, or tell us why it can't happen, or whatever it is, and to be that guy, to know that you have that ability to move things forward the way you do. That's is that anything you ever pictured for yourself in professional wrestling, knowing how long you've been doing this?
Not at the beginning, you just focused on how many bumps and cool moves you can do in the beginning, and then yeah, I think I would say maybe 8 or 9 years ago, uh, I was working with a guy named Tiger Hattori in New Japan, and world famous, renowned, historic referee, and he kind of did the same thing, and I watched him do this with multiple talents, and it was like, oh, if we need somebody, let's reach out to Hattori. Hattori will figure it out, and he'll find somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and get in, make it all work and get connected. And he came to me and was like, oh, I think we're thinking of getting a partner in the US. And at that time it was Ring of Honor. So, we sat down with Delirious at that time, and we are able to bring Ring of Honor and New Japan together. And that was kind of the beginning of that. And that was kind of like my first step into trying to connect the world of professional wrestling. So that he was a great mentor when it came to that. And I kind of learned a lot, like a lot from him. So pretty cool. Yeah.
That's like I'm so you're very impressive because there's so many like egos and personalities in wrestling that oftentimes don't mix together. So the fact that you're able to navigate it amongst one company, let alone multiple,
Mm-hmm.
is a very, very unique talent. And I'm just like, I don't know how you do it. And then on top of that, every time I see you backstage, you're one of the most cool, calm, collected guys back there, even if you're wrestling that day. And I'm just like, what is your secret? Because you clearly don't sleep. So that's not working for me.
Right. Right. I'm like part professional juggler, and literally, and I don't know. I love the business, and I love the wrestling so much. I know we all do, but I just feel like, yeah. I think I learned it's very Japanese, like the Japanese style of like approaching it with trying to approach wrestling or like whatever you're doing without an ego, and really trying to bring the group together, because if you load the boat and you've got a couple people that are anchoring the boat, you really can't set sail, right? So I think it's very Japanese way of kind of like bringing it all together so that we can all set sail and we can all like grow and grow the business, So I think that's one way that I think it really affected me, and spending the time that I have in New Japan. That's always kind of been the way, like no matter what, if you have problems with this person or that person, or you don't see eye to eye philosophy wise, in the end, you just shut up and you work together, and you really try to make it work. And I think that is something that, has been instilled in me. And I kind of want to try to set that tone for all of us, as much as we can. And especially any projects that I'm involved in, because when you are putting two companies together and you're working together, each company has what they need or they want. Right. So then I try to be the middleman to bring, negotiate correctly where everybody kind of ends up with something that they wanted, or, and I think that's most important. And it's a give and take, and it's not easy. And, sometimes some things are like smooth and you just have a conversation like, great, we're ready to go. And some things, take months, months and months and months to kind of really get it going and chip away at it. And then, and the cool thing about wrestling is it's a water business, right? It like is constantly changes directions, freezes, heats up, boils. I mean, it's always moving and flowing. So you kind of have to be ready to move with it, and however it changes, you have to adapt. So that's also something that's been helpful, and just letting stuff go sometimes.
The Rocky should also add lyricist to his job titles, because the metaphors he's throwing down, I'm just like, oh, buddy, like I got to make some notes here. These are great.
Yeah.
The wrestling business is water. Like I've never heard that before, but it makes perfect sense.
That's actually a Japanese term that they have with something like that. It's a water bit. They call it water business. So something else that I learned from Tori. Tori taught me that term, and I was like, that is the perfect way to put wrestling, because you always have to, stuff happens. People get hurt. Your business changes, networks change, like stuff that you can't really control all the time. So you have to be able to adapt and adapt quickly and go with the flow. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, talking about, by the way, that's going to stick with me forever too. That's one of those ones that's just, I think, is officially burned in my brain. Talking about having to essentially go between two companies and make sure that they're working in harmony. Let's talk about the most recent time that happened, which was Wrestle Dynasty. We are hot off of what ended up being an incredible show. One of the shows that saw Kenny Omega make his return to the ring against Gabe Kidd. An incredible match. It was one of those things, I rarely ever let my son stay up for a lot of things, but we stayed up for that one, and it was just an incredible night. But again, as a show that brought together the best of AEW and the best of New Japan, we've had conversations with you on the show before, talking about Forbidden Door and that kind of taking place on AEW's turf. I want to talk a little bit about how this all came together and putting it together on New Japan's turf.
So yeah, very similar to Forbidden Door, like you said, Will. This time it started. There was always the conversation between AEW and New Japan of how can we bring Forbidden Door to Japan now, or is that an option to bring Forbidden Door to Japan? Because obviously, this year it'll be in London, and we saw it in Toronto, Canada, just a couple of years ago. So I feel like it's such a great event that is able to kind of move around from country to country, and maybe we will see Forbidden Door in Japan itself. But I think New Japan wanted to kind of bring that version to Japan, and they also kind of felt like, okay, well, it's our time to host now. We'll host the party. You've been hosting the party for a couple of years. We'll host the party, and why not make it on a weekend? Because Wrestle Kingdom, which is the traditional event, that's every January 4th. It's always on January 4th. So
I love that. Regardless if it's a Thursday, a Sunday, whatever, always January 4th.
Exactly. So January 4th. So when you get it on a weekend, it makes sense to do it, a back-to-back event, So, when the ideas were going around of like, well, what should we do? Do we do 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom? And it was like, maybe this is a good opportunity to bring AEW. And then it was like, instead of just doing Forbidden Door, we've done AEW and New Japan co-branded show. Why don't we bring the rest of the partners in? Let's bring Stardom, Ring of Honor. Let's bring CMLL. So all the big partners, and we had representation from, the Rev Pro women's champion at the time, Mina Shirakawa. So it was a cool way to kind of bring them all together. And then like Forbidden Door, but slightly different, with everybody kind of being involved. So, the actual name Wrestle Dynasty was right pre-pandemic. New Japan had plans to go back to Madison Square Garden, and it was going to be called Wrestle Dynasty. So then, we've been sitting on the IP for the whole time, and we had these logos made and everything. And I was like, I feel like this could be a Wrestle Dynasty moment, a great way to introduce that IP. So yeah, it kind of just all worked out, and it, smoothly came together in the beginning there. And then the hard stuff starts when you're negotiating, like who's going to be on it and everything like that, but we got there. And like you said, Will, it was an amazing show. Never expected that, we would have a match like Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd. I mean, that wasn't even in the cards. It came much later. And, obviously not knowing what was going to happen to Kenny and during his state, And then obviously like an opponent like Gabe Kidd, where they've never even been in a room together, until that moment. So it was pretty cool. It was really, really cool to bring that together. And it was such a representation of like this younger generation, the youthful generation of New Japan, who, many stars have left and things have changed a lot there. But now we're seeing this rise of this brand new generation, and they're all super talented. And to see kind of the old school generation of Kenny, a guy who's headlined that Tokyo Dome so many times in epic, legendary matches, he comes in and wrestles Gabe Kidd, who's the future. So it was just a really cool moment. There was so much emotion in the building. And, when you're in front of like 16, 17,000 people and you could feel that emotion and the tension in the room in such a massive building, there's nothing like it. It was definitely a marquee moment in my career just to be a part of it.
It's the best part of wrestling. It's the unmistakable feeling that you are a part of something, and you can just feel the emotion in the air that you can't recreate, like watching it on TV, or even if those two competitors face each other again in the future. It's like, it's that time, that place, that moment, that location, those circumstances, and it's just so absolutely beautiful. And there's much more I want to ask about with Wrestle Dynasty coming up, but we got to take a quick break. So stay tuned to AEW Unrestricted.
AEW Unrestricted. It's Aubrey and Will with our guest Rocky Romero. Rocky, fifth most powerful man in pro wrestling. We're talking about Wrestle Dynasty. And you were talking a little bit about this next generation of New Japan stars, and we're really seeing it really start to take shape in guys like Yota Tsuji, right? Like, he really feels like a guy who is on his way to becoming almost one of the faces of the brand. How are you seeing a lot of this next generation shape up?
I mean, it's been very interesting. I like the next generation because I feel that there's a lot of edge to them. Even like a guy like Shota who feels like he should be kind of like a white meat babyface, has a lot of edge, and I love that the crowd has been booing him and not, they kind of feel like maybe he's like a nepo baby type of situation because his dad is in the business, and like, and his dad is sometimes refereeing these matches, like he did at Wrestle Kingdom. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and it reminds me a little bit of like the Naito situation, like when Naito was going to wrestle Okada, and they had Nakamura versus Tanahashi in the other big match, and then the fans had voted that they wanted the main event to be Tanahashi versus Nakamura instead of Okada versus Naito, and that kind of like everybody lost faith in Naito, and I felt like he lost faith himself. He went to Mexico, then came back a completely different guy and created a Los Ingobernables de Japón, and it was like the thing that projected him to the moon, So yeah, I'm curious to see how Shota reacts. I think it's very important. I think everybody will be watching, but I like that there's that polarization, of kind of what's going on. And then, like you said, Yota Tsuji is a person who I feel is undeniable. He's got that like Nakamura type charisma, but he's like super athletic, much more athletic than Shinsuke was, and very explosive. He comes from an American football background, which is very strange in Japan. It's not a very traditional sport that they play there. So, and he plays into his character, and he's got cool merch because of it. So I don't know. I think like he's doing all the right things to really show the world that he's already ready and there. And I think he is, to be the top of the top. And then you have somebody like Gabe Kidd, who's all just edge. You don't know what he's going to say or do, or, very like Brian Pillman. A lot of people have compared to him, but he's just a really, really great wrestler as well, so it's, you put that on top and you kind of put that all together. It's just a crazy mixture of talent and rawness that it's very hard to recreate. And it's very personal, and it has a lot of emotion behind it, which is something that we don't see. I think in American wrestling, we see stuff that's kind of sometimes feels overproduced a little bit, in certain situations, and where sometimes people aren't coming off as authentic as they could be. And I feel he's a guy who's super grounded, and everything you say, you're like, that's a real human talking.
Yeah.
That's a real person who has real raw emotions. And he also might punch me in the face in any second, so we don't know what's going to happen. So it just really creates an element of uneasiness, but interest, right? So, there's a few more people like David Finley has really come into his own, and he's not a guy who's like of the new generation, but a guy who I think has been handed the ball and has really, really run with it. And that match against Brody King was insane. And when he picked up Brody for that power bomb, I was like, what is going on? It just blew my mind. I was like literally jumping up and down. I was like, what is going on? So it was just a really cool event. And the mixture of just that element of, it is a celebration of wrestling and all the partnerships, but you can't help to feel a little bit of that element, like, it's your two favorite teams going against each other, and which side you want to root for. And you have favorites, of course, on the other side who you want to do well, so it was cool. It was a really cool event all in all. Yeah.
I think that's the piece that I really liked about the event was that, Forbidden Door, I think, it has always been one of our tentpole shows and is a very strong show. But a big piece of what fans kind of want out of Forbidden Door is they want the names from New Japan. They want the stars. They want the guys that they've been mostly familiar with. And what was kind of cool is on the other side to get to see this kind of rising next generation on Wrestle Dynasty, I think got to give, especially like the AEW fan, some exposure to what's been going on in New Japan and maybe the time that you might not be familiar with a product that's not an American wrestling product. And I thought that was kind of a cool way to get people introduced to a lot of what's been happening over time, while at the same time, you got to see these guys go up against, Jack Perry and as you mentioned, Brody and Kenny Omega. You got to see Ricochet go up against Zack Sabre Jr., who most AEW fans are familiar with at this stage. But get to see all these guys do the thing, and then to get to see the Young Bucks. We didn't even talk about the Young Bucks returning to the Tokyo Dome and becoming IWGP World Tag Team Champions. Like that to me was such a cool moment to witness that, and to get to do it with the old music too. Like it was so great,
so good.
Yeah, I was so happy to see the Bucks return. Obviously, it's all kind of starts from the Tokyo Dome 5 years ago, right before AEW started. That was their last event for New Japan. Then they left, started AEW, and so we hadn't seen them in almost 6 years. So for them to come back at kind of a pivotal time, and obviously that we haven't seen them on AEW television in a while as well. So, it was just a cool moment to see those guys, Kenny, Bucks, were so important in the growth of New Japan worldwide, starting AEW and then coming back for this like tentpole kind of historic event in Japan. I think was huge, and I think the fans really appreciated it. They got such a great reaction. And you never know, and they're against somebody like Naito and Hiromu, who are like the guys, right?
Legends.
In Legends in New Japan, and really they're the two guys who have really held the company on their shoulders. Not knowing Young Bucks win, what is the reaction going to be? And it was nothing but happiness, for the Japanese fans to see that they're back in New Japan as well, and they're just I have so many great memories with the Bucks in the Tokyo Dome. Me and Trent versus the Bucks, and we've had a bunch of great four ways that always open the Tokyo Dome, and we kind of set the tone for the event. So it was cool for me to sit back and I'm doing commentary and I'm watching, those guys, go for the heavyweight championships as opposed to like the juniors, like we did so many times. And I don't know, it just felt good. It felt good for me. It's like, this feels cool. There's a lot of emotion that goes in along with it, for me as well as a performer, to watch those guys go out there and do their thing.
Touching back a little bit on like watching the younger guys grow up and sort of like take the ball and run with it. I remember seeing Zack Sabre Jr. versus Ricochet announced, and I'm like, I saw that match in 2016 at an Evolve somewhere, I think in like New Orleans or whatever. And it was a banger then. And then to see where those guys have grown from. And I think that's one of the beautiful things of wrestling is we get invested in the people behind the characters and who they are and how they've changed and grown and where they've gone and who they've become since then and whatever storylines they may be in. It's kind of like a beautiful thing to kind of revisit these, I don't know, previous makeups. And like you said, like having all of this history with the two companies, because New Japan has such a storied history. AEW is still very young, but we have our own history developing. CMLL, like longest running active company in the world. So there's all of this going on, and it's so crazy. And I feel like one of the things that Wrestle Dynasty did well is it didn't just feel like this is Forbidden Door in New Japan. It felt like this is a New Japan event that is like Forbidden Door, but kind of their take on it. And I love that the two events feels different, very different, and kind of have their own vibe. But is there anything you've sort of learned from being involved in the planning of them that has helped one event over the other? Anything that you've taken from those that you're definitely going to apply to those in the future?
Yeah, I think in the future I would like to see more, I mean, even more of a celebration of each company, like kind of like you're alluding to. I feel like CML we had the Lucha not battle Lucha Gauntlet, the Fantastic Mania Gauntlet. But I would like to see now, like, CML talents, going for different titles, whether they're AEW titles or defending CML titles, there, which I think would be really cool and really special because we haven't seen that, in a while, or we maybe get a glimpse of it every, once a year when CML visits and they do Fantastic Mania in Japan. But I'd like to see more of that, and I'd like to see, I was glad that we had Ring of Honor involved, but I mean, I think that's another thing, that we could have. Imagine if Jericho defended, the Ring of Honor World Championship, that would be cool. So, and definitely definitely wild. And I would love to see like Rev Pro, and there's a couple other people that New Japan is working with, Maple Leaf Wrestling. I think that there's something to do there with Scott D'Amore. And I would like to really just make it an even bigger celebration, the next time we do it, and really involve more talent and really see more use of everybody's best foot forward, or like best features, So I definitely want to see that again. And but yeah, there's definitely stuff to learn, and I'm excited about the next one and how it comes about. I think I've definitely learned a lot from this side to, because working on Forbidden Doors now I have a lot of experience working on Forbidden Door, and it was very similar. But like you said, it's a different take. It's New Japan side, and the Japanese fans are different than American fans. So just trying to serve them better and create a card that's even bigger and better than the one we did this year. So I don't know. I'm excited. I think there's a lot of potential in Wrestle Dynasty.
Well, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about you. Because you, on screen, got to spend a big portion of last year being a part of the conglomeration. Yes. And, we've gotten to know you as far as the AEW fans are concerned, they've known you to be kind of a part of a lot of things. They've seen you as part of Chaos. They've seen you as a part of Best Friends. They've seen you kind of mingling here and there in a way.
Like he does behind the scenes.
Yeah, and you've gotten to stay kind of attached to a lot of these guys. With the conglomeration, what was always so interesting to me about the conglomeration, and really now that I'm like saying this out loud, I realize that was the birth of the conglomeration, really was the promos. It was getting to be the promos were really what made the conglomeration. It was like we got to see this cool camaraderie between these guys, and then they got to go out there and have kick-ass matches. What was it like getting to be a part of that through the summer and the latter part of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I started the year off with, a bunch of best friend drama, right? And obviously being so, close to Trent for so many years, and, Trent brought me into the group, and then everybody started doing their own thing. And, I felt kind of lost, in the shuffle a little bit of like, what side to pick. And, one side was pulling me this way, the other side was pulling me this way. There's a lot of stuff going on emotionally for me. So, I didn't really know where I was going to land. And I kind of floated and did my own thing and tried to separate myself a bit from it, and then obviously there's no way to get away from the drama. It always pulls you back in. And then right towards the end, then, the conglomeration was born, and it was all, with people who I had strong connections with, obviously Orange Cassidy and Mark Briscoe for so many years. I mean, my first Ring of Honor match ever, it was myself and Ricky Reyes versus the Briscoe brothers, so,
Wow.
I mean, that, yeah. So, and that was, so it was pretty amazing to be in a group with Mark, because we've never really been on the same side together, and to be able to be, back to back with him, and some of the stuff that we've got into in the last year has been really, really cool. And then obviously Kyle O'Reilly, as well, there's so many times where, it was like Red Dragon or Kyle versus me, and Kyle spent a bunch of time in New Japan as well. So there's a long history there. So, and as well, Willow Nightingale, who's, she's come into her own in the last couple of years, where, the first time I saw her, I was like, oh, it's undeniable. You're just like, there is something really special about her. And then all of a sudden she gets in the ring, and you're like, whoa, and she can go? Like, what is, like she's just incredible. And, she was the first, New Japan Strong Women's Champion. And, to have her be a part of that, when we came up with the idea, and we were going to do the tournament, it was like, Willow's definitely got to be involved. And to see her just grow every year, and just kind of like just beating expectation after expectation every time. Talk about someone who gets the ball and runs with it. I feel like she makes touchdowns just constantly. She's just really amazing. So yeah, for me, it was like a dream come true, because I finally felt like, okay, great, I got a home again, and I've got people that I can lean on, which is important. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in 2025. Obviously, like the wrestling business is always changing, like we talked about, like water. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens this year, and I'm excited. I think there's a lot of stuff, really cool stuff that's happening in AEW, especially coming off of 2024. And I love that there's this huge power dynamic, because it feels very real. Like when you deal with all these companies and you start to really break down, you start to meet all these different individuals and see how each person plays their part, and how each person is, pushing the power back and forth from each side. And now we definitely see that on screen right now, with the Death Riders. And, we saw with Orange Cassidy, him trying to stand up and be to be the guy to put AEW on his shoulders to counter battle against the Death Riders, and, Darby as well. So I don't know. I think, the Young Bucks disappeared, and Brandon shredding papers, and I don't know what's going on there. Like I like, it's like a scene out of a movie. So I'm really excited about this year, and see where I go. And I'm curious to see where the conglomeration is going to fit into all of this.
This is so good. This is so good. Oh my God, there's so much more to talk about. We got to take another quick break. I don't want to. I want to just keep talking. Stay tuned. AEW Unrestricted. We'll come back real quick. AEW Unrestricted, Aubrey and Will talking to the glue of professional wrestling, as we've determined, Mr. Rocky Romero, Rocky Azucar Romero. Fun fact, I taught Kyle Fletcher what Azucar translates to.
You didn't know?
You didn't know? I was like, yeah, it's sugar. And he's like, how do you know that? I'm like, well, let me tell you a long storied history about how I wanted to help our luchadors hit their times better.
I love it.
Oh man, it's so funny. So we were talking a little bit about before the break, going into 2025 and all of the exciting things happening. And one of the things I love about Forbidden Door season is getting to see Tanahashi and how absolutely wonderful and warm and welcoming he is. Like, even if it's the first time he's met you, he's just so respectful and wonderful, even though he's this legend and this crazy, like he's so important to the history of wrestling and wrestling currently, but he just treats you like an equal always. And I know that he's sort of on his like retirement year. I think in April, they've announced that it's his last match in the US, against Konosuke Takeshita, who's like, we've seen kind of like just completely skyrocket at AEW and elsewhere. What has it been like sort of seeing and working with Tanahashi over the years and sort of seeing him in this final phase of his wrestling career.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the guys that when I started in 2002 in New Japan, he was one of the guys that were like very welcoming and open and was like, let's go grab a beer, or let's go
Yeah.
grab some food. He's just such a beautiful man, like
Really?
physically and
Yes.
just an open heart. Like he really comes out. He's very authentic, and not only is he the guy that kind of single-handedly saved New Japan, from ruin, and really became the face of the company, but and Japanese professional wrestling kind of put New Japan on the map again. He's now in a role where he's, the president of the company, and I don't think that there's any better person than to have as that figurehead than Hiroshi Tanahashi. I mean, it means a lot to the fans. It means a lot to the wrestlers, obviously, and to the company itself. But he's actually super well educated. He went to like the Harvard of Japan, and like he's just he hits so many boxes. He checks so many boxes, and like I said, he's just a really humble guy, and just a guy with who's very authentic. So it's kind of surreal to see the ace, right? Kind of talking about his final year in professional wrestling, as a talent, which is just strange because, there's some legends that you just feel like they're always going to be there no matter what, like Elijah felt like that, he's just like, no matter what, you're like, well, Liger's there. He's always going to be there. He's going to be there forever. He's been here for 30 years, he's going to be there for another 30 years, and it's weird because, as I get older, I start to think like, oh, wow, like we all have our time and it's all kind of coming, it's all borrowed here. And it's, and to see it kind of coming to an end and coming to a climax for Wrestle Kingdom next year is kind of surreal. So yeah, April 11th in Chicago, Windy City Riot, like you said, we're going to see Takeshita, who's the alpha, right? And kind of the big Japanese star currently versus the guy who prominently brought Japanese wrestling globally. So I think like Tana set the stage and made the road for Takeshita to walk, and now Takeshi's not walking, he's running. Like he's killing it, like you said. So and I know it means a lot to Takeshita as well, because Takeshita was a huge New Japan fan growing up, and he used to write letters to the dojo and write letters to Tanahashi and write letters to different various wrestlers because he wanted to join the New Japan dojo. So I think it's just kind of full circle for him. And I know they faced off in DDT when Takeshi was super young, like 18 or something. So, and I feel fortunate that we're able to see it in the US, and it's going to be very accessible for so many people in America, to be able to see Tanahashi in a match has high stakes and that's very important,
Yeah.
So I think it's very cool. Yeah. I'm really excited for that. And I might cry a little bit, who knows?
Same. I think, especially to be in there with somebody like Takeshita, who I think being on just such the performance role he's been on, to get to see Tanahashi have that match in Chicago, I think is going to be incredible and something special.
Did you see Tanahashi crying during the Gabe Kid?
That's what got that.
Omega match?
Yes,
that was wild. I was looking over because I was doing commentary and he's on the other side, and I'm staring at him and he's bawling, and I'm like, no, oh no, what's going on?
It's contagious because I felt it through my screen. I'm like,
yeah.
That was something special to see Kenny back in that environment. That's really cool. This got me thinking though. You're talking about. As we're approaching the end for Tanahashi. But talking about you've been at this, is this year 25?
Something like that. Yeah, I try not to keep track. I know it's above 20 and I just say 20 plus because it just makes it easier.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think about it. I mean, when you start to see your contemporaries and the guys that you came up with start to kind of make the decision to go away, you start to think like, oh wow, like it's maybe coming a little faster than expected, and I don't know. I think about it all the time, and the kind of it changes, Like some days I'm like maybe 3 more years, and then some days it's like, well, maybe 5. I'm feeling really good. And if I'm on a high from a match, I'm like 5 years, no problem. But but I don't see it being more than 5. I think I'm getting closer and closer to it, and the busier and busier that I get, even though it's the thing that I love the most, is being able to perform in a ring and have the crowd go nuts. Is there's nothing like it. There's really nothing like it. So it's hard to walk away when you put it that way and you think about all these moments, and it's been my life for so long, and it's the one thing that I was enthralled with and just so fascinated by was professional wrestling. So it's going to be weird. And I never really thought I would make it to these heights. I never expected to make it as far as I have. So I don't take it for granted. And, when it happens, I don't know how it'll happen. I don't know if I'll have a send off or I'll just go quietly into the sunset, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I know we're getting closer though. I can feel it.
It's really cool you having the history that you do so that we can have these special moments like at Hammerstein, right? Like you come out, we do your entrance, and then we see Homicide upon the friggin' Tron. And how crazy was that, getting to tag with Homicide in ROH at Hammerstein Ballroom?
It was very unexpected. I was very surprised in general, when I were like, we have Homicide and he's going to be your partner. And I'm like, what?
I was right there in the room. I remember that conversation.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. So, but really cool because, we obviously have a lot of history in that building together and in that area together. And of course, in Ring of Honor, that was probably the first big storyline that I was ever involved with. And, to be somebody who was new in Ring of Honor at that time and kind of just be thrown into the mix with all the top guys, because at that time Homicide was main eventer, and and it was Samoa Joe, and it was us and Low Key, and it was just a really crazy time, and I learned a lot really fast, and I feel very fortunate and lucky to have been in there with those guys, even though we're all young and we're still all just kind of figuring it out. But I don't know, it was a very special time in Ring of Honor. It really was, and to see where everybody's at now is just mind blowing, to see, Danielson, who I spent so many hours with, over years and years and years, and training in the dojo together, and, sweating and beating each other up, and to see him, to the heights that he went to, and, then to see him, just a few months ago walk away, is it's weird. It's weird. It brings up a lot of good, bad emotions, because you feel I don't know, you just feel like that's your friend, and you want him to be well, and you want to see him to continue to do what he loves the most, because he loves it the most. It's the thing that he's so passionate about for so many years, and how many hours and hours and hours that we've talked about wrestling. Or, back in the day, we used to trade tapes like, oh, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? And, so I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, but it's interesting. And to be back with Homicide was really, really cool. Really cool. And like I said, very unexpected. It was like a nice way to kind of cap off 2024 for me.
Mm-hmm.
God, I love it. And I've loved this conversation. This has been
so good.
This has been really great. Rocky, it is always great having you here on AEW Unrestricted. You're welcome back at any time, because it always feels like there's even more to talk about. And, of course, you can find Rocky Romero on Instagram and X, Azukar Rock. Azukar.
Yeah, you got to roll the R, bro.
I can roll my R. Azukar. Otherwise, AEW Unrestricted is sponsored in part by Upper Deck. Collect your favorite wrestlers in 2024 Upper Deck AEW and start your trading card collection today. Unwrap autograph memorabilia and premium tech inserts. Visit upperdeck.com to learn more. You can listen to and follow this podcast, AEW Unrestricted, at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And check out the video episodes. You can see our pretty mugs on our YouTube channel at AEW Unrestricted. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And are you an AEW insider? Get early access to ticket pre-sales, special merchandise offers, and more straight to your inbox. Sign up today at AEWTix.com. And don't forget, AEW Dynamite on TBS Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. and streaming on Max. AEW Collision live every Saturday on TNT and also streaming on Max. ROH streams every Thursday on Honor Club. Otherwise, folks, I'm Will Washington. She's Aubrey Edwards. For our guest, Rocky Romero. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Peace.